Let's talk a little bit about the Galaxy Z Flip 5, which is still a couple months away at least from being announced. But we had some leaks this week, the end of last week, and today regarding a refreshed design for the Galaxy Z Flip 5. And if you think these leaks were accidental or shouldn't have gotten out, well, then I have a bridge to tell you because the timing is interesting to say the least. What device did you start seeing reviews on last week and will start getting in people's hands this week? The Moto Razr Plus, which has a gigantic, in comparison, external display, 3.6 inches, which they're advertising all sorts of app usage, responding to messages, which is something you could do on the first Razr that they came out with, the new version Razr, by the way. Whereas in comparison to the very first Flip, you had that little pill shape, I don't know what that was, external display. That was a joke. The very first Razr, while it's not comfortable, you still were able to respond to messages on the external display. But this year, being able to do that and the ability and the display size will make it that much easier on that. Plus the app integration, bunch of other stuff that you can play games on it now, the external display. So there's a lot of hype, and you'll see a lot of stuff, including videos here on this channel, that'll favor and highlight the external display on the Razr Plus. So, what is Samsung doing? They're saying, well, hold on now. I know you're going to be super excited about the Razr Plus when it gets in your hand. I know you're going to see all the comparison videos that'll absolutely wallop the design of the Z Flip 4, but know that we have something else coming. Know that, maybe it might be best to hold your money in your pocket for another couple months and at least see what we have to say and the design that we've come up with for the Galaxy Z Flip 5. That's important. I love the fact that this leak came out. I love the fact that Samsung now has to look externally here in the United States and see other companies and what they're doing and finally have to compete when it comes to flips and folds. Because we've seen a lot of, there's at least a half dozen devices overseas with their clamshell design with a flip that have larger outer displays, different features, all the rest of it. But since none of them really were available, readily available here in the United States, Samsung has largely been given a pass. But that's not the case anymore. Moto has turned its sights to America, and it's coming with a device that's pretty reminiscent of devices that we've seen from Oppo and whatever for the past year or so, a couple years actually, with these usable, supremely usable outer displays. So I'm really excited about that. So now, what's the battle going to be? I think that I think Samsung still will have, while it's not the first generation Razr by any means, I do think Samsung is going to have some advantages this year with the Galaxy Z Flip 5 versus a Moto Razr Plus. I still think they're going to have the software advantage, and you might like the more stock version of Android that Moto provides, and that's fine. But the thing is that it's the updates. Moto's gotten a lot better. I have the Think phone. I just talked about this in the last video that I did, that while they have been disappointing with updates in the past, it seems like, at least with the Moto Think phone, that they've turned things around. With the Edge Plus, they've turned things around. They recognize that the updates are just as important as some of the features on the phone now, since so many companies are using that as kind of a marketing ploy. Like, hey, our devices are supported for years into the future. So Moto really had to up their game with that. You're getting at least representative support now, 4 and 5 years on these devices. And while some of my Samsung devices are on the June patch, some of them aren't, and none of my Google devices, as of today, are on the June patch. My Moto device is. So while it's currently a software advantage for Samsung and One UI, that might not always be the case in the future. I do think Razr, now when they have a larger user base with Moto, with the phone, is going to get into some things that Samsung has learned over time. Like this year, the durability and wear, I know a lot of people have had some problems with still the display and some cracking along the crease here with that, or at least discoloration, which is a failure point for the Galaxy Flip 3 and 4. Some of the things, though, they have improved over time. Like a wear point for me last year was the screen protector coming up right at the T-junction there that they've put in there. But they've separated the screen protector enough off the edge of the display now where it doesn't have that peeling that I got last year. It was less than a millimeter. It's a small thing, but it makes a difference, and I don't have the same wear on the screen protector or pulling up or damage to the display that I started to see towards the end of the year last year. The hinge is significantly better than it was last year. They've kind of dialed in the feel. The Flip 3 hinge was a little cheap when you got to a certain point. This one, all the way through, has a nice, satisfying click, and you can see it almost feels like hydraulics in there in order to keep the hinge in various positions. Last year, when I got to about quarter of the way here, almost all quarter, 75% of the way down, my Flip 3 just wanted to fall in on itself, whereas my Flip 4 does not have that. So while I do think that Moto is doing some interesting things, and I can't wait to get my hands on the Razr Plus because I want a usable outer display. I want the color, Viva Magenta, man. I just want to feel that faux leather back on the device and get a different form factor when it comes to Flip. I don't think that Samsung's going to go quietly into the night now. I do think that they're going to fight back with a Flip 5, and I think the winner is us. The winner is the consumer when there's competition. I've heard that heard that before somewhere. We need competition for this. That's why I know the Pixel Fold. I have bad feelings about the Pixel Fold. I don't think at that price it's going to be competitive, but if they could do things through several generations of devices, they will push Samsung finally to up their game with the Fold devices. So that's something that's beneficial to us. So now we're going to have some competition to this. Otherwise, I like a lot of this stuff. If you take away the external display issue from the Flip 4, and you correct that on the Flip 5, the other design elements I really don't have a problem with. The fingerprint sensor is good. The display is gorgeous. The battery life now with the Tensor, I almost said Tensor, with the Snapdragon, the Gen 8 Plus, or the 8 Plus Gen 1, whatever they're calling it, the Plus version, getting the additional battery life that's needed and the power efficiencies. If they keep that up with the Gen 2, then you'll see things. And we've kind of seen that with the OnePlus devices, the OnePlus 11 with a Gen 2, the S23 Ultra with a Gen 2, both doing well on battery life. So if they're able to put a Plus version, or even the same version, in a Flip 5, you're going to be okay on battery life, which was a major downside for the Flip 3. So those are things that I think that they've gotten dialed in. And the rest of it is going to be aesthetics and personal choice. And I think when you add in the fact that One UI is dialed in, it's I think the best Android software on the marketplace right now. I love that they've had the growing pains of had it going through trial and error of things that don't work hinge-wise, things that don't work screen-wise and screen protector-wise, and going through a lot of those early drawbacks that they had with both of those technologies. I think the consumer benefits from that. So now they got to get back on the ball. They got to challenge Moto with some design stuff. They got to come out with a usable external display that's going to rival something like the Razr Plus. But the Razr Plus has its own things that it has to compete with. It has to compete with the build quality of the Flip 4. It has to compete with the hinge design. It has to compete with the screen durability of the Flip 4 that's been tried and tested here for a few years now. So there's pluses and minuses for both of these devices. We're going to go over them. We're going to compare it to both the Moto Razr Plus, to both the Flip 4 and the Flip 5, and see how it holds up. But either way, I do think that we're coming out ahead because the Flip technology, I love the Fold. I love the Fold 4. I love those big tablet kind of folding devices. They're really neat, and when you start using them, they're fantastic. It's hard to get away from them. It's hard to pull my SIM out of the Fold 4 when I have it in there. However, I do think for mass adoption, especially when you're talking about price, these are even the higher end one, like a Flip 4, is the price of a regular smartphone, flagship smartphone at this point. So this, I think, is the form factor that eventually is going to get mass adoption, and you're going to see in the most amount of hands. I've seen more Flip 4s in the wild than I have any other folded device by far over the last however many years. A lot of people are starting to adopt this technology. I think this is where the win's going to be. So it's nice to see some variety there so we can get some innovation and maybe even a little price competition at this form factor, in which case everybody is going to win. If you've made it this far, like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Until next time, have that Steve-licious day.